Howdy folks, welcome to another edition of the Scannell Agenda. My name is Stephen J.F. Scannell. Today's date is November 2nd, 2018. The title of the show today is Cape Wind Consortia. This is show number 94. In concert, let's say working in concert, and ships traveling in consort. If you look at the dictionary, if you have a consortium, that would be one business model. More than one is several different consortia. That would be singular. So I'd like to reframe the questions. I did a show about Cape Wind a while back. I forget the show number. Cape Wind. All kinds of stuff in here, and anyway, it's basically we had it wrong because we were off on a tangent about Jim's wind farm. And I've said this before, but we were not doing planning for the future of wind and wave energy systems. It was all about yes or no on, I called it Jim's wind farm. So I think to reframe this thing might be a good idea. And I was kind of excited yesterday about possibly getting a new group of people to take over the capewind.org and then use a different business model other than, yes, we want Jim to have his own wind farm. All right. I stepped up to the plate with a consortium model, and those people, which I consider to be, let's say, the yes people, to be problematic. Because I think public resource issues basically should be handled as just that, public resource issues. I took it as a public resource issue. I didn't think it was appropriate for 10 or 12 or 15 years to be going on and out of Jim, yes or no, for his wind farm. He wants a wind farm, he wants the permit to do it. And it was a little bit over the edge to me. I didn't like that. Now the no people were hell-bent because they were waterfront type people, I think. So the waterfront people, it's kind of typical of the waterfront type clique that they want nothing, nothing. Anything interferes with their waterfront, they're going to be out there with a hammer like they're killing fleas, bang, bang. They don't want anything going on the waterfront. Except, nice houses and nice sailboats and nice neighbors and very protected areas, but no industry. That's my attitude about what's going on. I've been around the waterfront for a few years, so take it with a grain of salt. So Cape Wind, it was kind of an all or nothing on either side. The yes people were like framing the whole question like, wait a minute now, it's not about hydrogen and compressed air or having a business model that lets people plug in a windmill to these systems and these pipes and then coming in on the monorails. And it's just not about that. It's not about that, stupid. And it's about yes or no for Jim's wind farm. And that was as far as I got with these people. They just didn't want to hear it. I tried. And Jim Gordon scoffed at me. He didn't like that I was getting involved with this other tangential idea about, compressed air, windmills, wave generators, that kind of thing. But I still claim I've solved the energy crisis, but it's like the fisheries. You need an economic base, a management base. We don't have that for offshore wind and wave. And I don't think you can ship electricity successfully inshore. And I don't think you can store electricity successfully to ship it inshore. And I don't think the two systems are going to be compatible with each other, having land-based, let's say, gas plant and a wind farm. But, you know, maybe I'm wrong. It's not hard to fire up a gas plant, so. But how long is the gas going to last, right? It's just a finite resource. The wind might keep blowing. You never know. Waves, etc. I'll bring in a book called 2 Years Before the Mast and read from Richard Henry Dana about how rough it is with wind against water out in the Gulf Stream south of Nantucket, southeast, southwest of Nantucket, the Gulf Stream, when the waves make up there on a northeast wind. It would make people sick that hadn't been sick in Bennett Sea all, you know, for years and years. They'd get sick right there because it would be that kind of a sea. It would just be real hellacious. And that's because when the wind opposes the water, it steepens up the waves. Bang, bang. It's tough. So the no people and the yes people for Cape Wind, I'm not impressed. I am impressed with my consortium approach, and I am impressed with a positive way forward using hydrogen, compressed air, and oxygen-rich compressed air as the three green fuels of the future. And so I do see this Cape Wind possibly going forward with a new business model and not like chanting for Jim. I mean, that was so it was just not the thing to do with such an issue, political, I guess that's how it washed out. It didn't help that, you know, the newspaper was the anti. They were a big player. The Cape Cod Times was a big player on the no side, and that's pretty tough. I think I had the answer all along with the consortium. Now, the reason I'm saying that is because with a consortium, you can have windmills owned by, you know, other than Jim, but Jim could participate. And, you know, you'd plug in your windmill to hydrogen lines and compressed air lines. Or you'd be working with other people and you'd produce the hydraulic power that it took to generate electricity to crack the water into hydrogen and oxygen. And of course you'd mix the oxygen with some compressed air. And that would be a valuable product. Of course the hydrogen is an extremely valuable product. And people say, well, the hydrogen economy, but you can't get the hydrogen. Well, you can get it with wind energy. And you can get it around, you can transport it with the monorail systems. So that's why I've solved the energy crisis, not because I invented something, really. It's just a synthesis of off-the-shelf items. Pipes, I didn't invent the pipe. But you can put the hydrogen in a pipe, and the pipe acts as a tank, as a storage tank, and as a delivery vehicle. So that's storage and delivery of green energy. Do we have that now? No, we don't. What's it take to solve the energy crisis? Storage and shipment of green energy. That's what it takes, and this is it. But I didn't invent the pipe, okay? I'm just pulling this stuff off the shelf, putting it together. So you're manufacturing hydrogen, you get your oxygen, that's valuable. You compressed air, is very valuable to run a lot of different things. I mean, they run cars with it. In India, they've had these air-powered cars for years and years and years. And they have hybrid air-powered cars with gasoline. And then they have, you can run refrigeration, you can run air conditioning using compressed air. So that's a heck of a slice of the pie missing now from your electric load. If your electricity doesn't need to run air conditioning and refrigeration, that's pretty big, because now the lighting is with the LED lights, of course, you know, that can be run pretty much, if that's all we had to do, you know, with some PV cells. So very important is the fact that you recognize that the energy crisis can be solved, and that it possibly has been solved with the shipment. When you crack this issue about shipment of energy, green energy or any energy, and storage, energy storage and energy shipment, that's what gets it done. That's what gets it. So with Cape Wind down in Florida, Cape Canaveral, and there's Cape Hatteras, there's Cape May, there's a lot of capes around. So we could say these different consortia named after your local cape, Cape Cod, Cape May down there in New Jersey, Cape Hatteras, Cape Canaveral. These could be different consortia that could use fisheries as a particular avenue. Now, if you're offshore with wind and wave generators, now for years I've been designing these things with artificial reefs built in, and that's fishery money. So that's important to have the fishery money included, because if you have structures offshore that are capable of producing fish, there you have it. That's an income. So with some of the eelgrass sod farm offshore installations that I've been drawing up, I've gone from saying, well, you know, your fisheries assets would account for between, you know, 2 or 3 or 5% maybe. You know, these are all heavy equipment for wave generators and windmills. Now, when you add to that your sea farm systems, like the eelgrass sod farms offshore, well, now you're talking about real significant inputs from fisheries into all these systems. So then you could go and say, well, it could be up as much as 20% of the value of the project could be associated with your floating marine laboratories, your eelgrass sod farms, your tire reefs that produce the fish, mussel reefs, et cetera, et cetera. In other words, hatcheries for fish and things that will jumpstart the fisheries and then maintain the fisheries at a high level of production. So when seafood gets landed in great tonnage, then you'll say, oh, that's how it happened. It's not happening now, but this is how it has to happen with these consortia. Now, consortia, let's say for the English Channel tunnel between France and Britain and some companies, that was a consortium of different countries and different companies. It was just too big of a project for a company or just the government. So you had to be very inclusive, and that's why we go with a consortium model. And we could have gone with that years ago with this. No, we had to have Jim, does he get his wind farm or not? And that's it, that's all. Jim's wind farm, yes or no? I think that was the stupidest issue. That was just so stupid. And it's like we had chanters chanting for Jim and people that hated the wind installation out there. I was like, okay, you know, this business of having some nice ground that happens to be inshore, but it's listed as offshore, it's a federal area, I thought that should have been given to the state years ago. However, it wasn't, so it was federal area. And what makes it, I think it should go to the state, and the state should basically deed it over to, let's say 20 different, or 50 different universities, one for each state, and then they could work with their own universities in their state. And it could be a proving ground for anyone that wanted to do wind and wave or artificial reefs or even a sewage plant, a green sewage plant out there in the middle of the ocean. There's a lot of different things you could do for research and development out there at that location. But I would say wind and wave would be good. Small models, 10% models. I mentioned all this before. So if it wasn't yes or no, people were scoffing. The no people were like, where'd he come from? You know, what's this? You know, consortium model. Whew, get him back to Bay Bridge, you know, put him away. Get him out of here. But if it was right, they wouldn't have known it because they're just scoffers. So yes people and you know people, and they're both scoffing at each other and scoffing at anyone else that wasn't on their page. It was just a very poorly led issue. You didn't have the cream rising to the top, and that's me, with, hey, let's do a consortium. Okay, listen to this. With a consortium, we can do blah, blah, blah. Wonderful. Well, what makes more sense than that? Anything? Giving Jim the real estate? No. Letting Jim plug in? Okay. You're not giving away the farm. And he'll take a percentage, and you'll take a percentage. The consortium will get a percentage of the product, whether it be electricity, hydrogen, oxygen-rich compressed air. It's, pardon my palsy, I haven't been drinking. And then, of course, compressed air that can run refrigeration, all those products. And plus the fisheries product, if it's a consortium, that you can account for fisheries products and a percentage of that game, you know, because if you're producing the fish, you should get a cut. So let's reframe the question as a consortium. Oh, we don't want to do that issue again. Well, I want to do a different issue. I think that whole area should go to a consortium of universities and business that can actually put up some models, a 10% model of an offshore wind and wave installation or eelgrass or, you know, sewage facility, offshore green sewage type facility, which is what my basis for the eelgrass is. It's sewage farm stuff. Sewage, eelgrass, sounds terrible, but in that you growing your landside sod with your bioproducts of number one mostly, and then you're planting eelgrass in the sod that you grew, and now that product is not going into your water table, it's going offshore, and it's producing eelgrass. So you've taken your lemons and you're making lemonade. Dale Carnegie stuff, you might say. So for Florida, now with a Cape Canaveral consortium down there that would be pretty handy, what we'd do would be to have canal pipes that would bring in the salt water. And these would be pretty easy to lay and build because you have a ready conduit in that you have all these canals that come from, let's say there's one set of canals, the St. Lucie Canal coming from Lake Okeechobee, and then you've got a few more canals that I see here. Hillsborough Canal, New River Canal, Miami Canal, and I don't see Canal Point at Bryant. I don't see a label on that canal. But there's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 plus the Kissimmee River, that's 6, plus this canal that goes through Lake Hickapochee to the west, and it ends up over at Cape Coral, Fort Myers. And you get the Everglades down below. So what I'm saying is the solution here for this little zone, and also up north, is to get the good stuff, which we all think of as the bad stuff. Get that, these nutrients, which is ending up at Port St. Lucie and some of the other beaches on the west coast and the harbors. With the algae blooms, it's really going to be hurtful to their economy and to the all the natural systems too. It's like salt water is kind of like a natural antiseptic, folks. It's very good. You know, for years I used to take salt water and snort it and keep a cold away, or if you felt a cold coming, you snort the salt water. It's just a natural antiseptic. It's very good. I don't have to sell you on salt water now, do I? Oh. So we can bring in salt water into Florida in the canals with pipes in the canals. I've got this drawn up several different ways. I don't know whether one big pipe, 2 medium pipes, 3 small pipes. Do you want a freshwater pipe? You probably want a pipe coming in with the good clean salt water from the ocean. And there are some derivations of that. Sometimes what you want for a hatchery is salt water that comes from a salt well and not just from the ocean, because it's got all the critters are in it. So if you wanted just pure salt water, you'd do a salt well. So if we were running a hatchery and we had a salt well, that would be the ticket. We didn't have that on Nantucket. We just used the raw water. So it makes it tough if you don't have the right water to use. So this could end up being an extravagant set of pipes coming inland. You could even take a saltwater shower if you were in Florida. Let's say if you had your pipes coming in with the salt water and going out, and the outflow pipes would be carrying your good stuff. That's our waste products of number 1 and number 2. Farm stuff, mud from the bottom of a canal and a pond and Lake Okeechobee and all these nutrients. I want to see that get put somewhere between 3 and 20 miles and a little bit here and there to the reefs. You build the reefs and you build the shrimp hatcheries to go with all this stuff. So you're bringing in the salt water through the canals, and you're using the salt water for many, many different things, including real estate values. If you create a salt pond, you can go fishing and swimming and sailing just like a freshwater pond, but you also got your oysters and your fish, etc. So I'm looking at all the incomes from this project. Now also with Florida, my monorail systems, maybe I should be talking to Florida people, not Massachusetts and Cape Cod people. You mention a monorail down in Florida. Well, they've had that for years and years down there. And the other thing with Florida, it's easier because it's flat and it's populated. It's kind of an isthmus. It's a long, it's a long stretch, and the roads go north and south, basically in east and west. Well, not really. Now, building a monorail there may not be a good idea, because what if you're building a monorail and you're using standards that are not right for the winters here in New England? That may be a bad idea. So, there's good and bad. But Florida could probably build a good monorail system simply because they need the salt water too. And that would cure and solve all their algae and such issues. It would also drive the tourism quite a bit down there in Florida. And tourism's their big deal. It's a vacation land. It's a retirement in a farming area. And I'm sure they build a lot of boats down there. etc. But the natural environment is what they sell. And this is not far removed from the natural environment because it's salt water. And all of Florida is basically very low. So you wouldn't have to pump up too high. Now I'm getting into things like, when do you pump and how are you going to pump this water? Well, I would think that you'd be using water lifts and mechanical lifts because you really don't have to go the high up to get salt water inland in Florida. So canal pipes will be the way to go. I've got them designed now out of wood, and I'm designing a lot of this stuff now. And some of it's square pipes, because if you have a vehicle in the pipe, a battery-powered vehicle underwater, and that is carrying the shrimp spat, then that's going to end up, 3 to 5 or 6 miles out there in the good Gulf water, fostering all this beautiful shrimp fishery out there. So fisheries relates to this consortium big time, whether it's Florida or not. Okay, well, thanks very much for watching the Scannell Agenda.